Hello, Metin. Good evening. Welcome to the Creative Insider.
Well, hello. Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure.
It was. I'm very also honored to have you on because I was telling you in our pre-conversation of the podcast that I've been following the work of your office, Studioninedots, for a while, and I love the projects you guys do, and it's a pleasure to hear more from the kitchen. I'm curious always to understand a little bit the background of my guests, and you are the founder of this very successful and I would say now always bigger and bigger office based in the Netherlands. How did you decide to start with architecture? Do you have a family background in the field, or what was your story about joining the world of architectural design?
Yeah, that's an interesting one. I don't have a real beautiful answer to that actually, because as a child, I always drew everything. I was like, especially copying and try to make it as perfect as possible, and then make a story of it. So I like to draw a lot, but in the classes in school, I was quite good at the technical classes. So like mathematics or science or whatever. That was quite easy for me, and all the languages, as you can hear, listen to my English. I was not really good at that, so I had a totally technical background at school, but I also like to draw a lot. So I was searching when I was able to do a study. I was thinking to myself, what is a combination of creativity and technical? So it could be anything. I didn't have any architectural feeling at all. And then a girlfriend of mine, her father was an architect, and he really told beautiful stories about the profession architecture. And he told me to sign up in Delft. That's a good school for you. You have to go to the technical university, and then that will be perfect for you. So that's basically how I rolled into architecture, but it didn't. I could have also been an industrial designer, as long as it was a combination between something creative and technical. It could have been anything. Yeah. So that's it.
But the Netherlands are quite advanced in the field of design. I think you mentioned where you studied in Delft is quite a popular university, I would say, around the world. And I know that there are also quite good industrial design schools. I'm not sure in which city, but because of Philips.
Also Delft.
Yeah,
Philips, yeah. That's that in Eindhoven they have the really good one.
Yeah. So I think the Netherlands are quite fruitful from the design point of view. And did you have also then, once you joined the world of architecture, did you have also some international experiences before joining the professional world, or you went throughout the studies more or less more in Delft and in the Netherlands?
Well, yeah, to continue almost your first question is that when I went to Delft, I was very curious, of course, if it suits me well and if architecture was the place to be. And I have to tell you, to be honest, that the first 1.5 years was really awful. And I didn't like it at all. I made some really nice friends, but we mostly made music and stuff like that. So we decided to go traveling, and we wanted to go away. So we bought a ticket with the small money we had to go to Brazil to visit a friend of mine. And we stayed in Belo Horizonte. And from there, we did a lot of traveling. And then, it's mostly coincidence, but we fell in love with the Brazilian architecture. We saw beautiful buildings of modernistic buildings almost, from Lina Bobardi, Artigas, Villanova Artigas, or even Niemeyer, of course. And so when I came back from that trip, I was there for 3.5 months. When I came back, I was really in love with architecture again. And then the second part of my study, so the first part, I didn't like it on the TU Delft, but the second part, was totally different, because I had a sort of, it really changed inside me that I really loved architecture. And then the coincidence was that the school had some money free for all the people who wanted to create their own projects. So the school asked a lot of students from, if you have a good idea and if you can find a good architect outside the university, you are able to get him in, and then we can do a class with him, lecture with him, and even a project. So that was really, really nice. So when with a few friends, we contacted a lot of beautiful architects, good architects like Winnie Maas or Xavier de Geiter. So that was my international connection a little bit. So we all invited good architects, and they did some a course in on the TU Delft. Of course, they get paid for it, and we love to do the architecture with them. And that was quite a lot of fun, and that continued all the way to the graduation. So we got a lot of lectures from beautiful architects, even around the world, from Hadid to Eisenman. And in my period, that was quite something. The lecture hall was really full with people. Thousands of people came to only see Eisenman speaking, or Koolhaas or whatever. So that was quite enjoyable. So that from then on, after the trip to Brazil, I was really into architecture. Yeah.
No, it sounds like a great start, and I think that's also one of the strengths of the Netherlands as an outside observer, that in general it's quite open for experiments, and also through the projects that you can see built over there. I mean, I work in Germany, and here some of the ideas I see realized in the Netherlands will be a little bit too much for our clients, I think. And as you mentioned, some names from the scene there, there are quite a few quite good and quite advanced architectural offices. And your office, it has this name not by a case, but 9 dots are, if I'm not wrong, nine dots, 9 points of architecture that you have set up together with your partners, which you are partner with and started the office. Can you explain more about those 9 points that you guys have figured out, and more also about the other 2, so to say?
Maybe it's good to have a small introduction about that as well. I had a small, after my graduation, I started pretty quickly for myself with a friend. And then because I got a commission from my parents-in-law to make their own private house, and that was quite good fun to start with. So there was a reason to start my own company together with a friend. And it got published. We didn't have Instagram at that time, or Pinterest or whatever. So the only goal for architects at that time was to get into prominent magazines. And so we reached quite some magazines. And then from there we got some more commissions from Interior, a little bit bigger. And later on, even a third party, and that's the partner now I'm working with, Vincent van der Klei. He is one of the partners who was the third partner in my old company. So that was basically how it a bit started. And then in the office we had, the small office, we were thinking of going different directions. So Vincent and I were thinking of maybe going, seeing the future in this way, and the other partner was seeing the future in another way. So we were rethinking for opportunities to pass by. And then at the same time, you talk about the other 2 partners, because we now have an office with 4 partners. The other 2 partners also had their own company. It was a bit bigger than ours, and they are a bit older, and also had more clients and stuff like that. But they were sort of feeling stuck at one level. So they were a bit bored with what they did, and they wanted to reach a sort of higher ambition as well. So we got together and we were discussing, okay, what can we do? If we want to do something really ambitious, we should start all over again. So we have to forget the offices we have, and then start something completely new with a new name, new identity, everything. And that we thought of a name and that's maybe the answer to your question. But it was really difficult to find a name because, as you know, almost if you have one you like, it already exists somewhere in the world. So what we did, we were seeking for mostly for really exceptional new ideas. So it also came to mind different words of thinking out of the box or this or that, and then we came up a small game. I think it's from the 19th or 18th century. It's a very creative game where you can only solve the puzzle by thinking out of the box. So it's literally 9 dots. You have to connect in one straight continuous line in 4 lines. You have to continue you have to touch all the 9 dots. And when you have a square with 9 dots, you cannot do that only by going outside the square. So basically you have to be creative. That's the whole point, to solve that puzzle. And that's when we stick to the name. That's how it started. And it was quite fun thinking a name, but we had like hundreds who failed.
Yeah, and I mean, that's the name also represents quite then what turned out to be the work of the project. But I saw you also set up some little sort of manifesto for like a guideline with this 9 sentences where you define a little bit what is going to be the design guideline, and also I think the workflow guideline, because also I feel that you wanted to mention the cooperative and working together towards the project. And this is interesting for me. Many offices that are very famous have to define their line by one person, so to say, because the design is very very clear. Like, for example, I can mention that not by one person, but they have sort of a line of design, so to say. You can recognize who did the project, and your projects are very, very different from one another. What is your design process and design method that you use at the office that it has worked for you so far?
Yeah, that's a really good question. If you talk about the philosophy of the company, we are discussing it a lot, of course. I have to say, because it's really new, that I told you in the informal question that we started Studioninedots with 4 partners. And at the moment, we actually are connected with 4 associate partners as well. So we are sort of a bit of also growing in ambition. They are 4 people who work for a while with us, and we knew the talents and the creativity. So now they are a part of the team and the partnership as well. So we have a lot with a big group, like 7, 8 partners discussing all the time what our goals and missions are in the future. But if you think about the design process, it's better maybe for me to introduce something how we work a little bit, because we are mostly interested. We always said to clients we like to build in urban cities. That's how it started, because there the complexity is maximum, and then we need maximum creativity to solve the problems. So that's basically how it all started. But now we are still thinking and looking at the world, which is changing rapidly as we speak. So it's totally the world is in transition all the time, and that's actually a very good thing. But it's also a very tricky thing, because if you look at architects, it's a different profession. We are actually one of the professions which are one of the slowest, actually. If we build a project of, let's say, 150 apartments, it takes us 3 to 4 years from scratch, the first sketches to completion. So in that time scale, the programs already change. So sometimes we are making the building, and we made the ideas 4 years ago, which are actually stupid in a world which is so quickly and so rapidly changing. And if you look at, for example, libraries in the last 15 years, libraries are no longer the libraries we used to go. During my time, I was renting a book and reading a book there. And if you go to the library now, it's totally different. They do workshops and it's all computerized and stuff like that. So airports, shopping malls, libraries, everything is changed during the last 10 to 15 years. So our profession is not keeping up because we are actually too slow. So that's basically one thing. And if you look at what is happening in the cities at the moment, they're getting denser and denser. It's even said that in 2050, I think, 70% of the whole population on Earth is living in cities. And that means, and you can already see it in densely populated cities in the world, you see that houses are really getting smaller and smaller. The workspaces are getting smaller. So people are getting squeezed into the urban density of a city. But the public space is lacking. So because, yeah, that's basically a whole different story. But because we're trying to make more houses, because the city is getting more denser and public space is getting less and less, because because if you look at the market economy, it's totally changing the whole way of living in urban cities. Now the private sector is winning and gaining everything. So the public sector is changed into the private sector, which costs a lot of money and is difficult for a lot of people in the world. So the question is, how can the public return into the private? And that's basically one of the main sentences for our company. We see that the urban quality and the public space is really lacking in a lot of cities. And maybe you know, but there's of course the famous Danish architect called Jan Gehl, who gives beautiful lectures around the world, and he is always searching, and his whole life he's committed to searching to improve the quality of people in urban densities in cities. And he has a famous quote which I really like, actually. He said, postmodernism and modernism together with the cars destroyed the public domain. And if you think about that, it's really true, because if he always uses images like, for example, Dubai, where you see this monolith, beautiful tower building, bang, put on a plot, and all the rest space is a sort of, the rest space is then filled with cars, and that should be the public space. So the lack of public space is really asking for an architect to do something with that. And we think our office is, everybody wants a healthy city. Everybody wants a sustainable city, a livable city where you can meet people, engage with each other, maybe, also provide knowledge to each other. That's the city we want. And of course, in your mind, you have the beautiful squares in beautiful villages in Europe, like Italy, where everybody meets there. There used to be a marketplace. People gather, people exchange ideas. That's really lacking at the moment. So we were saying to each other, can we sort of make places where people can interact or can meet each other? And that's basically how our office is working on every scale. Like our own office is even a space like that. We call it a WeSpace, and maybe you saw that on the internet as well. But it's also into all the interior projects, urban projects, housing projects, office buildings. So we were searching for new ways of interventions in all these layers of design, where people can meet each other and where they can interact. And it's not like making a hole or just fill it up with something and you can drink your coffee there. No, it has to be a place which really communicates to everybody around it. So people should love it, people should enjoy it. And you can, I think you can do that in many ways. If you talk about WeSpace, we have some good examples to show you why all the projects are different. Because the one example we have is like a student housing project where the client said, we really want some outdoor space somewhere at the back of the building for all the students. Can you arrange that? And we said in our design, we have to make something really strong. It should be a real intervention in the building. It should be it should even look at make a new identity for the building. So we made a whole roof sort of connected urban landscape of outdoor terraces where people can meet, they can fall in love or have a party. So basically, by doing that on such an extreme way, in such a strong intervention, we reinvented places where things can happen instead of all the predictable places in public space. So that's only one example. And another example I really like is an office building in Hilversum, which is an old industrial area where we wanted the client wanted to transform an office building into a new way of working. And instead of, and we couldn't even find a door. There was a sort of old building, beautifully old, post-modernistic almost. And we were thinking, okay, what shall we do? And if we look at the urban plan we made there, we could imagine that the urban route walking through the urban plan should go straight through the building. So instead of having no entrance, we said, why don't we make a very obvious entrance, but a beautiful one? So we cut out a sort of orthogonal language hole in the building on two sides. We connected it internally on different ways. So when you enter that entrance, it's a sort of almost, you don't understand it at once. It's a sort of mixture of a beautiful experience, old structures you see, because we cut out a lot of floors and facade elements. So the identity of the building became strong. You could now, as a sort of semi-public space, walk through the building, be connected to people who work there. And around that intervention, we created, of course, the stairs and also the surfaces like a restaurant and stuff like that. So the intervention is something the people who work there, they are really proud of it. They're happy to show you around and bring you in, and then everybody, oh yeah, that's where I work, and you can see it there, and that's my the other department. So they are much happier than just a regular office place stacked on top of each other with a staircase somewhere. So we try to do in every way, in every project, on every scale, we try to rethink the intervention we're going to make to make people meet each other. So that's basically the interaction we seek for the people we want to have. But we have more design tools. So one example more from the WeSpace is, for example, now we are almost finished with an office building in the center of Amsterdam, where we created a sort of staircase with very big plateaus surrounded with greenery. So the stair is actually not a stair anymore. It's, of course, it's a stair to bring you from A to B, but the plateaus are so comfortable and they're surrounded by green. They're even very, very beautiful. So, and the plateaus are so big, you can drink your coffee there. You can even meet people there. You can even have a party there or a lecture there. So it invites the use of the program in such a way the client didn't ask for. So we tried to give the client something extra, which he didn't ask for. He didn't ask for a meeting place on the stairs on every level. But by doing that, people enjoy walking, and it's healthier. The green is healthier. It's a BREEAM building, etc., etc. So in the end, the identity of the building is a part of the intervention we do on every scale. And you mentioned before we started that you liked the Westbeat project. And that's actually also a very important design tool. Instead of doing a small intervention at an entrance or in a structure, that project was totally different. The client, it's in the west part of Amsterdam, which was not the most beautiful place to live, but it's a big housing project actually. And the client and the municipality, they said they asked for a building which is so strong and so beautiful that people really want to go there. So how do you do that? And we won the competition by saying, okay, the housing will be, of course, very cleverly orientated and of course on top of a sort of plinth, like every normal building. But we decided not to make the plinth like a regular plinth with program on the sides and then parking in the middle or whatever. We decided to lift the whole building and make beautiful arches, I think we have 80 arches or something, which are all different. It's a square, it's a sort of plaza from 65 by 50 meters, concrete arches, and some are even 9 meters high. And the design tool we use there, that the space is so strong in itself, it cannot be destroyed, because the program, and as I told you before, our profession is so slow. It takes 4 years to complete that project. It's completed, but we didn't know in the beginning what kind of program would be there 4 years later. So that's why we designed these beautiful arches which have an open connection to all kind of urban factory around it. So it's a sort of it's a beautiful connection to the urban streets around it. So that's one very important thing. But the other thing is that it's suitable for any program. Now it's filled with people who work there. There's a restaurant. There's even a concert hall where you can do performances and meet each other. And of course, all these apartments above, these people come down in the same and meet each other in the same area. So it's a really lively place. And I think it becomes even more lively every day. So maybe if you visit it sometimes, you will see how it works. But that's the tool we used, is to make a really strong ingredient which cannot be destroyed. I don't really mind if, let's say, in 5 to 10 years, the program will be changed into maybe a library or something completely different, because I think it also suits there. I think people really would like to go there and read a book or meet people in workshops or whatever. So for me, I think the tool we use there is extremely good, but it's of course a big gesture. Huh? It's a you cannot do it in every project, but this one really worked quite well. Yeah.
I love that project. As you said, the process is so slow that the first time I saw it was just a rendering, and a few weeks ago I think I saw again the photos, and I said, oh, finally it's there, and it looks quite like on the first images. And you mentioned Jan Gehl. That's an awesome mention and quote, because he is also a very important figure for myself, because exactly the topics and the problems that he talks about were the guideline for my thesis, because I grew up in Rome, an Italian city, and he explains a lot through the Italian city. And I live in Frankfurt, which is a city that's very modern and has been rebuilt after the war. And I was trying in my thesis to translate exactly what Jan Gehl explains in his books, like the livable city in a modern architectural language, and try to mix the functions, because this is also another problem that in the 19th century we have had this zoning, more or less. Here we work, here we live, here we go shopping, and now we're going back to this mix. And also another thing that I can recognize in your project, and what he also mentioned, is that we lost a little bit the beauty of the architecture itself, the beauty of the facades that makes you like to watch the building. And we have these very squared cubicle boxes from the modernism and postmodernism. And but I always like to we architects are the designer, but in the end of the day, we're not the one that have the last word. And I wanted to ask you if you have any insider or any personal suggestions, how can architects better expose their design ideas to the developers in the end of the day, which are the people who are gonna pay for the building? Because sometimes it happens that they're more interested into the square meters purely and numbers of that sort. So how can you take these values that you have and sell them then to the developer to make him go with the idea?
Yeah, that's a good question, because we always struggle with how much money does a client have for which project. First of all, the interventions we do are mostly not, as you said, all the projects are different. but mostly we always try to focus on one really strong intervention. So if you talk about money, the money goes into that strong intervention. Of course, the rest should be really good, like a lot of beautiful facades we are making, but a lot of architects around the world can make beautiful facades. So I think that will not be the discussion. The intervention is always a discussion point for the developer or the client or whatever. And on different scales, I can explain you why you can sell it maybe to a developer. If you think about the WeSpace intervention we do in some project, for example, if you have an anonymous building which a developer wants to develop, or he wants to have rental spaces for people who can work there, and he thinks they should be a really beautiful places to work, to have meetings, to lunch, to drink coffee, blah 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 blah. I think the program will not be new, but the way you organize it, that's something where architects can be inventive and can be creating something new. And if we make a sort of intervention in a building, then we can explain, or what we always do is by making that intervention, we not only solving the infrastructure inside the building, for example, the staircase or whatever, we're not only solving that, but we also make a new identity for the whole building, which people can love or hate. But of course, we try to sell it to the client that people will love it and will use it. And then it becomes a bit more interesting for the developer, because he knows that if the whole building is boring, who wants to rent it, or who wants to live there? And he knows that if the intervention is really good, people will love that space, and it's a sort of extra quality added to the program. It's a sort of extra quality added to the whole building. So people are proud to rent the space. You know, I rent that space from Studioninedots with all these arches, or I rent that space where I can rent a house where I can have be a part of the terrace experience. If you can sell that to the client, he sees the quality in the social quality of that intervention. And I think then he can rent it out better. He can sell it better. It will be for the future, people are more happy there. So that's basically how we try to do it. It's a sort of extra added quality, which is not only for the intervention because we as architects like it, but it will make a strong identity for the whole project and also for the building. And most of the time they come to us and they say, can you make a building? But of course they want something beautiful with a strong identity. So yeah, that's basically the main question from clients. So we always try to figure that out. How can we have a sort of win-win combination? And it's the same with urban plans. Maybe it's a different question from you, but in urban plans, you see that the cars are getting pushed out of the urban plans nowadays, which I think is good. But there still has to be some cars. You can put them under the ground. You can also try to rethink where do we put them now? And we in one of our urban plans, we designed a sort of parking garage on inside. It's a project in Utrecht where there was an old building. The old building was really beautiful and is still beautiful, and we made some new development around it. And the client said, okay, but how do we transform the old building into something I can rent out? It's not usable right now. And in the center of the building, it's a very deep building, a big box. In the center, it's really dark, and I cannot rent it out like this. So we decided to put a parking garage in the center of that block. So we had a sort of win-win, because by doing that, all the cars were out of sight, and they were inside the old building, so nobody sees them. So that's an advantage, and it's a sort of carless area where people can walk from the garage. At the same time, by doing that, all the people who come by car, they still activate and activate the whole building, because they will meet each other there. They step out of the car, they drink coffee, and then they walk home, for example. So we made the building, the unusual space, we made more usable. So maybe there's all small examples. I can go to every project, but in every project we try to find up a story to sell it to the client and to the developer in such a way it's also an advantage for him, because he also want to rent out the space. He also want to sell the houses and make something beautiful, but he doesn't want to have a ugly parking garage somewhere in the middle of the urban plan. So for him it's also it's a sort of win-win combination we're always looking for by doing the right intervention. And that's quite difficult, but it takes you a lot of study in each project.
Our process as architects is also so slow because so many people are involved in the process. Not only the architects, but the construction companies, the engineers, and nonetheless, the city and the authorities. I was wondering, because I always try to compare what you say compared to my experience, which is way smaller than yours, but it's in a country next to the Netherlands, Germany, where regulations are very, very strict here regarding everything. You can imagine fire security, in case of parking spaces, the air quality and the air flows and things like that. I'm curious how it is in the Netherlands. What is your experience with the authorities there, and are the regulations a little bit more allowing you to go with this more experimental projects, or more how do I say it, unconventional solutions, so to say?
I think we have maybe a little bit less, but we have the same problems, of course. We now in Holland, it's also there are new regulations all the time, and this year they introduced the bank, for example, which is a very sustainable ingredient. You have all the buildings we make have to be right according to that regulation, which is sometimes a pain in the ass. You cannot freely design anymore. But to give you an example, maybe how it works in our minds is that, for example, we are working different competitions at the moment where the regulations has changed. There used to be, for example, in the time where we did Westbeat with these beautiful arches, in that period, they said the most points for the competition are you can win if you do beautiful architecture and if you do something really good to make it work there, to make the urban factory come to life again. In the latest, let's say, competitions in Amsterdam, the municipality almost gives no point for architecture anymore. They only give points for sustainability and for biodiversity. They say these animals have to live there, the plants have to grow there, etc., etc. And if you only think about it, oh, now my architecture is limited, then you have a sort of, then you cannot do anything, because if you make a beautiful building and you want to make it brick, it's totally not according to the biodiversity rules and regulations, so you get no points. But you can also look at it in the other way. We are quite creative as architects, so we are free to think about what if biodiversity is really important. Let's say how many earth do you need for that animal to live there or that plant to grow there? Is it 1 meter? Is it small? Is it water, etc.? So we are actually studying projects now where the nature is leading for our project. So we turn it around. We say architecture is really following the regulations of nature, and we don't know how it looks yet. We're not finished yet, and it's not on our website yet. But I can imagine some beautiful new architecture will come out of it because of the strict regulations, if you know what I mean. So in forehand, I would not think of it as a sort of a problem. I would always think of a sort of a new way of adding creativity and maybe come to something really new. And hopefully the intervention is really something we can do there as well. And maybe you can experience the green and people love it and can make use of it. We also, another example is also Westbeat, the project with the arches. It's a really noise polluted area. So there's one sort of Lelylaan rushing by, and it's a lot of air pollution by the cars. and we have the Ring of Amsterdam, which is connected. So actually, it's really on a corner plot divided by two roads with a lot of cars and noise. Instead of seeing that as a problem and making a facade closed or something, we try to work with and team up with good advisors, like not a sort of technical advisors or acoustic advisors in this way. And so we work together with them. How can we make a new way of blocking the sound of the cars, but not blocking the facade? We can do it with glass, we can do it with double layers, blah, blah, blah. And then we came up and then we studied from which direction the pollution, the car pollution, the noise, I mean, that came from. And it was actually from one direction. So it's not from the cars from that direction, but it was from the cars from the other direction. And that was very interesting because then the advisor told us that if we open up the facade and make a green wall, like, you know, you see it in all the new projects, you see greenery everywhere. So if you make a green wall, then the noise will hit the green wall, that will be absorbed, and then it will not enter the apartments or the corridors behind it for the entrances of the houses. So we were able not to close the facade and make it green. So we had a sort of win-win. We could keep it open and we could make it green, and the client wanted to pay for it because or he has to pay for the green or he has to pay for a double facade. So and by doing this, the building gets more beautiful and we block the same sound. So sometimes strict regulations can also start something new. So it's in Dutch we call it the suskast. It's sort of blocking the sound by making it go around this way. But you can also do that with plants. So yeah, maybe in Germany the regulations are so strict it's impossible. But I would always be open-minded with it and maybe think of one way out or use it in another way.
No, definitely. I mean, there are certain regulations that that limit, for example, one very strict regulation here is the one about fire safety, which limits in some office spaces, for example, this opportunity to keep open spaces throughout different floors, as you were mentioning, so that people can actually see each other between the different levels. But of course, one way of saying in English is no pressure, no diamonds. So in this case, the pressure coming from the different factors generates, as you said, these new evolutions of architecture. In the beginning, you mentioned that your first project was the home for your parents-in-law, I think you said, or parents, I don't remember. And now you mentioned competitions. One very big challenge for architects when they're starting is to get the first project, because they say that you cannot build a house before you have built a house. How do you get most of your project nowadays with the studio? Do you leverage now your longer experience and and maybe there are some people that directly come to you and want you to work for them, or is it competition still the main way of getting new projects?
That's also a good question, Georgie, because we have a lot of discussion that internally, and I can tell you why we have the discussions, because if you, for example, build a lot of housing projects, always the new clients who come to you are people who wants you to make housing because you're very good at that. So once you do something, the new client will always ask you to do the same, more or less, because you're good at it. And originally, we are mostly a housing company. How do you say that? We're an architectural office building houses. But of course, we want to build something else. We also would like to do different projects. It could be office building, interior space, or even commercial buildings or whatever. But if you're only building art centers, I recently heard Soil, the office in New York, Dutch Floris, the Dutch owner of Soil, he told that he is now trying to make housing. So you always, as an architect, maybe that's because of creativity, you always want something which is greener on the other side. So if you build houses, you want to do something else. If you're making interiors, you want to do housing. So and that makes it, of course, difficult, because the clients who come to you are mostly the clients who come to you because they know you're good at that part of the architecture. So what we do is, first of all, we want to do everything, from making a chair, designing a product, to maybe do whole urban plans or whatever. So every skill, I think, is important. It doesn't really matter as long as you can make your own story in it, or design, or you do your intervention and contribute to the public space qualities. If we can do that, then we don't. That's basically what we want. But yeah, we have to work hard to get the clients in all these different skills. So some are coming to us a little bit easier because we did a lot of these projects, and some we really have to work hard and do acquisition or competitions or whatever. And we still have a list of things we are looking forward to doing once the next 5 years, but we still do not have the clients yet. So yeah, hopefully they also clients comes to us because they like to have a building where they have something beautiful and a smart intervention where people can enjoy living or working there, or using it. So it's still hard working. I don't have a one proper answer to your question. Yeah, we have a lot of partners who all do acquisition in different direction to get hopefully all the different projects, because that's, I think, what every architect wants.
And once an office grows bigger as yours, another thing is that in the beginning it's easier because you get one project, maybe alone or 2-3 people. But once you get a bigger team, you have to, in advance have more and more because it's like having a big army. You have to feed a lot of people. So I guess
exactly.
The stress gets more and more. And one thing that often happens is that also when the companies grows and get bigger, the founders and the people in charge in some cases get more and more away from the actual nice work, which is designing, and they turn more into chasing clients or dealing with the problems that are not the very fun one, like that are related to business, taxes, problems, people leaving, people coming, and so on. So I'm curious, what is your workday look like, and what kind of tasks do you mostly have?
Yeah, that's it's interesting. It's all these things you mentioned. I can feel them because I experienced them all, I can tell you. But it's a sort of how do you say, dare to fail, huh? I mean, by experiencing all the time, you will find out that some skills of your company really don't work, because then you have to do a lot yourself. Doing this, I remember even where I was really small, I also have to do my own taxes and things. I have to fill in forms. I have to do this, that. Even to get paid, I have to call the client. Do you pay me? So if you do everything, sometimes it's really annoying. And if you grow, sometimes the skill is perfect, because then you could have the people on the right spots, and then it's a sort of balance. And then when you grow a little bit bigger, it becomes imbalanced again, and then a bit bigger, and then it's a sort of a new way of balancing. So it's a sort of try and error, because we are still finding the perfect line, because we are quite different than most of the companies I know. But actually, if you ask me how we work, we have a sort of open-minded office where we work with, of course, we have the partners, and we really want to divide all the projects and also all the designs. So all the partners are part of part of the design, all the designs of Studioninedots. And within the office, we work with 3 different large teams, you can say, and the teams are different because one is 2 of them are really architectural teams which serve a lot of projects, and one is really the urban fabric where we serve a lot of urban plans. So these 3 are led by 3 creative people, important people, and we all meet on Mondays. So the Monday is really an important day because then we meet each other, the partners meet, we discuss all incoming projects, new projects, old projects, problems, people, we discuss things, we even discuss designs sometimes, and we also mostly on Monday evening we discuss some further ideas. A few of them we discussed already in some questions. Where do we go? Do we have the right interventions or whatever? But for the rest of the week, the teams and the team leaders are quite free to organize their own bubble, you could say. If they want something, they can arrange it. And so we give the responsibility to a lot of persons in the office. It's a risk. Sometimes it fails, but sometimes it works quite well, and they get a lot of responsibility which they like. They can arrange it in their own way, and sometimes it really it works out well. So that's basically how it works. So Monday is a pressure cooker day where every work is divided and all the things are being discussed, and then the rest of the week people work, and mostly in their own things and own projects and stuff like that.
And what is your bubble? Is more this competition side of the whole job, or is it more on ongoing projects, or both?
Really mixed, yeah. Almost every partner has ongoing projects, and almost every partner has a few, we call it tenders nowadays. It's not really competition. Sometimes it's a pitch for architects, but mostly it's competitions. Yeah, so it's even there, it's nice to have a mixture. So in project, you want to have a mixture. Big scale, small scale, you want to mix them all, because then you can touch all the layers of architecture. And also in work, you want to touch all the layers. You want to do competitions, but you also want to do one-on-one project. Yeah, and it's difficult. You have to work hard for that to make it all work. It's not. You can make it much easier for yourself if you concentrate on only doing schools the rest of your life.
And the one thing that is very peculiar for architects and designers in general is that as we don't do something that it's written in a book or written by a book, it requires a lot of time. How is going for you with the extra time and extra hours? Do you try to keep a right work-life balance, or is it still sometimes very hellish where you have to go through very, very hard days with the long hours?
It's basically both. We have periods where in Holland we have like it's strange, it's so almost a sort of a ritual, but we always have 2 phases during the year where the pressure is higher. So just before the holidays in summertime, always just before the holidays, everybody wants to finish projects, wants to going for building permits or blah blah blah. So the pressure is always on that time, and you have a sort of few points in a year which is a sort of pressure cooker. Besides that, I think an example now is we're going to move. So we're now in a beautiful factory in Amsterdam North, and we are really working hard on a new. We're going to move to a new beautiful place, but that takes so much energy. We have to rebuild the other place. We have to move everything. We have to. That's basically where we're in at the moment. So the pressure is also on if you do something out of the ordinary workflow. So if you're not doing projects, but if you do a whole movement of the office, it takes a lot of energy from everybody, not only from the partners, also from the staff. So that's an important one. And of course, you have the COVID period, which was quite annoying. Sometimes you were in a sort of vacuum and feel like doing nothing. And sometimes you work all day, even the weekends, to cope up with projects, because yeah, everything worked differently in that period. Now still a few people work mostly at home. I don't know how it is in Germany at the moment, but yesterday there was a sort of press conference from our minister, and we are sort of out of our lockdown finally. But before that, it was so unbalanced to organize everything in the right way, and that costs you a lot of energy. So sometimes we have energy and it's spoiled by something like that. Huh? So yeah, but it goes like this. It's hard work, as I can tell you. It's
in Germany, the rule it's lockdown, but you can go work, and you should go work because the economy is important too. So me personally, I haven't experienced much of working from home or lockdown, and I was lucky to stay healthy so far. So this is how it goes here. One thing that I'm very curious about is now we had talked a little bit about philosophy, the outcome of some projects, client acquisition, and so on. But how is the workflow when you receive the assignment for a project? And the first ideas that you have a competition team or multiple teams that do different competitions. Do you gather ideas from all the members of the team and then you figure out which direction to take, or maybe the competition manager arrives with some idea and then the team develops it and then you see how it out goes, because it's the beauty of architecture is also that you work in teams and then you have multiple minds coming together. So how do you proceed in this phase?
Yeah, if we get a new commission or a competition, it's both the same. You have to make a project and you have to work hard on it. So we have to, as I said, on Monday we discuss how to incorporate it in the ongoing projects. And we always know that there's a lot of communication between the client and between developer, between sometimes even more parties. So we want to have a project leader first of all, who walks alongside everybody, and he is doing the organization and more or less the whole communication of the project. Of course, one of the partners will be connected to the project as a main partner. He is also responsible for the end result and for the whole project actually. But we always do that in a buddy system. So there's out of the partners we select two partners. So one is leading and one is his buddy, and that's basically, of course, with some other people around it, the team which starts developing the project. And then we have a sort of say the project leader. Of course, in a competition you have a lot of other people like the constructor and advisors, like as I said, the acoustic advisor, climate advisor, etc., etc. So you build a whole team, but from the inside of their office we mostly have a project leader, some other assistant designers, and of course the leading partner and the buddy partner. And that's basically the team who start making the ideas and starting up the project. And then sometimes on Thursdays evenings we put them on the table, and then there's time for all the partners to look over the shoulders and help the buddies if they need help, or even come with ideas if they need assistance. That's basically how every project is starting. So make a team, buddy system, and then put it on the table. Everybody has this overview once more, and everybody knows then it's going in the right direction, and then it continues with the same team again.
Another curiosity that I wanted to ask you is that a lot of people that's gonna listen to our conversation, and then a lot of them will know you already, and some will go through the website or maybe see your works, and especially younger people that are in architecture will consider joining, try to join the office and the team to be part of this beautiful workshop for these projects. What are the tools that you guys use in a practical way? I mean, of course, a lot of probably model building and stuff like that, but software-wise, nowadays, I had a lot of people from the world of BIM, parametric design. If somebody wants to join the office, what kind of skills or prerequisites should he or she have in that sense? What is good to learn to join the office?
Yeah, that's a question I would probably answer differently every month. Because it's really yeah, it's not a static thing. We don't look for that type of person or whatever. The most important thing, maybe it's the most soft thing, the most important thing is that we feel that somebody is connected to our team, but as a whole. You're part of the family of Studioninedots, and that should be a good feeling. If somebody is really good in what he's doing, but he doesn't fit in the whole family, sort of family, yeah, then it doesn't work. So for us, the most important thing is that it's a nice person, it's a good person, and he fits in the whole. Not, of course, you don't have to be friends with everybody, but you have to fit in some way or another, and that's just a gut feeling and how people react on everybody. You can tell it in not like in 2 weeks, but in a half year you know it for sure. So that's basically the most important thing. Then if you talk about skills, we always look for, like every office, we look for talented persons, and that's also a try and error system. So sometimes we try with people and we thought like it was this level and we cannot touch it. It's all much less than we expected. And sometimes people surprise us and they come in like a sort of trainee, and within a year they can become project leader. Everything is possible in our office as long as you're committed and if you're able, if you want to grow. And sometimes we really searching for specialists, like we are now working with a new 3D drawing computer models, and sometimes you really need people with a lot of experience in that direction. But yeah, I'm not going to say that we're searching these people because for me the important is the atmosphere on the floor. If everybody walks there with a smile and have the energy, I think the projects will be better.
Yeah, that's very important, because I know it's important to have a good mood. And I understand what you mean, that when you go to work, there is nobody that completely ruins the atmosphere at work. You don't have to be best friends, but you have to be able to work and be respectful and kind with each other, and constructive, so to say, in a sense, to work together, not against each other.
As we started, I mean, we're not only searching for interventions to make social interaction possible in a project, but also in the office. We like if people interact with each other and learn from each other and help each other or whatever, then the community starts. And I think if you're a part of the community, you feel happy and you feel proud of being a part of. So you have a lot of fun going to your work instead of feeling the outsider or yeah. So I think community feeling is really important.
Yeah, especially when you do competitions or feasibility studies where you have the deadlines, you have long hours together. Often you stay in the office, you eat pizza or something, and it's sort of like the sense of camaraderie builds together, and you really become like a family. And is the team very international, or is it mainly Dutch? Is it a requirement to be like a Dutch native speaker, or do you have also, I don't know, do you work a little bit in English at work too? How it is?
Yeah, we are multicultural. I think that's also important for us, that we like to be sort of open for everybody and all the influences we can get. But I have to say, and it's really something strange to hear maybe, because if you want to grow to a sort of project leader, we still know that in Holland, it's for a lot of clients, not for us, for the clients, it's important that a project leader speaks the native language. So we have a lot of people speaking English in the office, which is actually no problem, especially not discussing a project. But for the clients and the developers, and sometimes to lead a project in a very rapid way, or a lot of information and making contact, emails, stuff like that, if you do not speak the language, you miss a lot. So I have to be honest about it. That's still not working with internationals unless they're very good in organizing that. But it's more difficult, I can tell you. So
Yeah.
most project leaders are speaking Dutch as well. But they can be two languages. Some foreigners in our office speak better and better Dutch, let's say. So that's also good. I mean, yeah.
Yeah, also because of all the regulations that you have to read, and I guess also when you submit the project for construction permit, you have to fill out some paperwork that's in Dutch. I mean, I talk with experience with somebody that came to Germany with no German at all, and now I managed to speak it and go to meetings. So I guess, but I'm also in our office we speak a lot of English because it's nice. We were talking about that a few days ago, that there are people from almost every part of the world, every continent, so many languages, cultures, and this is nice. And I guess that in your office it's like this too. Is it easier to find people in the Netherlands for as architects, because you have these strong schools that generate this there? Like, for example, they say in the US, Silicon Valley, it's where all the companies and tech startups were born, and that where they start. It's because of all the university you have there, Princeton and so on, Caltech, and so that they are like a hive for generating talent. Do you have a little bit that in the Netherlands?
Well, at the moment, I don't know what's happening, but it's quite difficult to find good people. So I do not have a feeling that it's easy to find them. And of course, we have good education schools, and we have some technical schools where people are used to work in practice. So they have a lot of experience in the practice, and that's good. Some, let's say, the technical university are less practical but more conceptual sometimes. So you can choose where you're searching a little bit, but it's quite difficult nowadays. So I cannot say it's easier in Netherlands or people from from abroad or whatever. No. And actually, I'm not the one judging all the persons who we are hiring. So it's not really my department. But yeah, as I can hear, that's quite difficult to find, because we do some requests sometimes, and it's difficult to find the right people.
No, definitely. I didn't think that you were the one evaluating every single application, but for example, there are a lot of chit chat. There are a lot of chit chat around the office also, where I work. Sometimes we chit chat. Even I'm not at all involved into that part of the of the work, but yeah, sometimes they would come and tell us, "Yeah, do you know somebody that can do that or this?" Because we're looking for people and we cannot find people. So it's some sort of gossiping that goes through, I think, every bigger office.
I can tell you at the moment we are really looking for people, and yeah. So if people are interested, they can easily connect to us. But yeah, it's not that easy to find the right persons.
Is it the new office where you're moving in? I saw a few months ago when you first announced through your social media that you were looking for a space, Is it gonna be a bigger space where you can then grow the family further on?
Well, it's not, the contract is not ready yet, so we are not certain if we move there, but we wish to do more or less the same as we have now. So we want to make a sort of social place with different companies coming together, exchanging ideas, and maybe work together as well. So it's going to be maybe the same size or a bit bigger. Yeah.
And before in our conversation, we were mentioning how architecture, it's a little bit steady compared to the fast-paced world. And one question that I would have for a person like you that it's involved into trying to build some things that are more future-oriented or more timeless oriented. Do you think that another factor that will be more and more involved in the way we use architecture will be technology? In a sense, I make always this example, for example, in automotive, which is the next bigger object that we have in our society. We have now more and more car sharing, where you just use your phone and pick up a car on the street, and you use it, and then you park it somewhere, and somebody else can use it. Do you think that technology can be also implemented, or will be implemented in that sense in architecture? Also now, because of the pandemic, we have seen it that the way of work, also of life, has changed. That maybe we are more decentralized, where you can go with your phone in a building and check out through an app. There is a free room. I can go get in with my laptop, sit, work for 2-3 hours. Do you think this will be the next step, that we build these buildings, but they will be more and more for everybody throughout technology?
That the only thing I do not really understand about the question is, do you ask me if it's going to be a design tool, if architecture will be developed by the new technology, or do you mean implemented in architecture? Because if you mean the last one, it's already being done a lot. I mean, even car sharing, we use it in competition to discuss the amount of parking spaces and stuff like that. So if you talk about implementing the new technologies, I would say definitely they will all be added to buildings or concepts or whatever. But if you say it will also be a part of the design, then I think you mean a sort of maybe parametric design. And I think it might happen, but then it should be a strong ingredient. So if you talk about sharing cars, I don't think that will make new architecture. No, I think it can only provide stories as a sort of parts of the architecture, but it cannot provide the architecture, if you know what I mean.
No, of course. Exactly what I meant is it's be implemented in architecture, but by implementing into architecture, it will change. Maybe if it will change a little bit architecture and the concepts that we have of certain buildings right now. For example, as you mentioned, not only the office buildings, but even hotels. We have now we have Airbnb, that it's for example, everybody can share their flat, and maybe in the future there won't be I don't know, I can make a name, a hotel that's just a hotel, but maybe it's a hotel with just a floor for rooms, and then there are apartments, and then you can really, if you need to go for a month somewhere, you just go in. This is my idea of implementing architecture, so that exactly change the building types as we have it now. And if my question was, if implementation of technology can enhance even further on the concepts you were saying from Jan Gehl.
Yeah, that's a sensitive question, because if you ask me, again, I think it definitely will be implemented, but we still stay humans, and we still want to meet people. So because of the technology, you don't want to be in the most boring hotel ever. So that will not work. So it might work to make everything more efficient, or maybe. So I think for some parts of the buildings or the concept we make, it can work and provide better way of experiencing. And it can only provide new concept if there's a really strong parametric statement. For example, if you take the sun, or if you take a green, as I told you before, if you put it in parametric design, then maybe the buildings will look and start to look something new because of the designs of that ingredient. But I think small technology efficiencies will be a part of the, maybe making a house better work, or maybe make it safer, or maybe quicker or better, or it can react to, if I do this, it will react on me. But that's only the partial experience. What I find very interesting at the moment is that we can really, the how do you say, the vernaculars,
the virtual
the
reality
glasses,
glasses, the Google.
virtual reality, yeah. We're not going. It's not only interesting for using it in your design process, because you can use it, give it to the client, and you can experience the whole building, or even fly over it. That's all. But it can also be a part of how we how we how we will live in the future. I mean, if but it's almost a philosophical question, because if we really are gonna go there, do we need architecture? Because in your virtual reality, you can make all the spaces you want, and you can be locked up in a prison, but still experience the Bahamas. So I mean, it's almost, you're almost discussing it now in a philosophical way, how it will implement human life and human behavior. And yeah, we can have a whole new podcast about that, I think, because it's an interesting question. But what I notice now is that all these gadgets and even solar energy things, and the way of car sharing, everything sharing, makes a sort of new stories for competitions, but it doesn't really change the way we make architecture at the moment.
Who will live, we'll see. I gonna conclude the topic with this. And I could talk to you for hours, but I don't want to keep you away from the rest of your day too much. I'd like to conclude each conversation of our podcast with our different guests on a positive note by creating, I like to call it the melting pot of inspiration. And I always ask all the guests what is their favorite thing that maybe they do to get inspired. If you have some favorite book that you can suggest, favorite movie, music, you mentioned music, museum or event. You can mention not all of them, or you can mention as much as you want. You don't have to go through this. You can just say something that you like to do, or to consume, or to experience, to get inspired.
Yeah, that's a nice one. Yeah, I would say to the people now in Holland, everything is open again. You can go to the museum, and finally, which was closed for a while. I always, if I walk through musea, I always get inspired, because I see so many different things. I cannot never think of it myself. So I'm always inspired by walking around in museums, and sometimes I do that twice a month, but especially once a month, I'm into one of the museums in the Netherlands. And during my whole life, but it's personal. I think every partner has his own inspiration platforms. During my life, I'm always interested in the surrealistic combinations, and that can be combinations in program, but can also be combinations in materials, or even look and feel, or movies where things are really are sort of extracted out of the ordinary and put in each other in a new way. So if you talk about favorite books, I still have a list in my closet where all the books of Bernard Sumi, the early works. I mean, I think 94 or something. He wrote some books about Event Cities series, which is really interesting. As a student, I was really fond of that, because in his books, he was free to design within a totally new way of thinking. He designed his new buildings by extracting the program, which is normally always like this, and putting it in another way into each other. It's almost deconstructive architecture, but in a very clever way, and creating events. And that's basically what Studio 9 does at the moment. We're trying to interact by doing smart interventions. We also try to provoke some new things that can happen there. So I'm also always interested in a sort of something which is not really perfect, or something which is not really correct, maybe. So that inspires me. So it's not the latest book I've read, of course, because it's way back, the Tsumi series. The latest book I read was the one of Bjarne Mastenbroek, which is called Dig It. Also very inspiring and educational, but it's yeah. So I think you should just go and get inspired, because there's so many beautiful books, buildings. Of course, you should visit a lot of buildings. I always make a list for myself of buildings I really want to see, and if I go there in the neighborhood, I always try to visit them. So in the end, it makes you really be inspired, and walking through the beautiful buildings is the best way to get inspired in architecture, I think.
That sounds great, and I hope to have the opportunity to come back to Amsterdam soon, so that I can go experience some buildings from Studioninedots, and eventually give you a call and come say hi to you in the new office. Thank you. Thank you very much, Metin. And I want to say that it was a real pleasure and honor to talk to you. And I say to every guest, this was the first time on the podcast, but whenever you or your colleagues or somebody from your office wants to come and share some story, you're always welcome back.
Okay. Thanks a lot. Yeah, thanks.
Thank you very much.
Discussion. Okay. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.